DJ PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. It is time to welcome in Shehan Jeyarajah from CBS Sports. Shehan, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
You got any deep insider analysis into what Texas Tech did to BYU? Because that looked pretty clear. That was lopsided. That was domination.
Yeah, it was a pretty crazy victory. And, I mean, I think it really comes down to what that Texas Tech defensive line was able to do. That was the big matchup heading into this one, and I actually felt like BYU fought in a lot of spots. I thought that they did a great job in the red zone limiting Texas Tech's offense. I thought that, honestly, I felt like they had a pretty good plan on offense. They just, they had some drops. They weren't able to execute. But a lot of this you just have to credit to Texas Tech. This is one of the most dominant defenses in the country. This is one of the most talented rosters in the country, and they just have so many different ways that they're able to beat you. And on this day, on a day that BYU really did not play a very good game overall, this is what happens.
Which was louder, the sport coat you wore or the Texas Tech stadium fans?
Man, you know what? I knew that I had to bring out something special for BYU being in town and Texas Tech being in town. I did get a lot of comments on that one, but no, man, it was a lot of fun. And the one funny thing was I showed up to the stadium and I'm like, wait, this doesn't look too much like BYU blue, does it? Am I going to get yelled at by people? But thankfully, people saw the vision. It was a dark blue and gold. It was different.
Good for you. You're known for those. I've seen you, and they're fun. You have a style that's unique to yourself, and only you could pull it off, and you do. So we saw last week when the poll came out that there were 3 teams in the top 13, obviously with Tech and BYU, and then the Utes at 13. Now we expect certainly BYU to fall. How far do you think they'll fall when that poll comes out?
Yeah, it's a great question, and here's what I'm most interested in, right, is that I think that Utah getting as much respect as they did is a really big deal, not just for Utah, but also for BYU. Utah is the 3rd team out, but I think that also with a head-to-head win that BYU has, that was, a pretty solid win, that should give them a floor. They shouldn't be able to fall below that number 13 spot, especially on a day, by the way, where Oregon didn't exactly cover itself in glory with a close come-from-behind win against Iowa. I mean, when you talk about Notre Dame, that's still a 2-loss team, one that rates very highly still. Same with Oklahoma and Texas. They've had their bad spots as well. And the other thing, too, just to look ahead also, is that Texas still has to play number 3 and number 5. Oklahoma still has to go on the road to number 4. So, I think that there are also teams that in the next couple of weeks are poised to potentially lose some games, too. So I think that, for me, I'm probably thinking 11 or 12, which frankly to me is a little disrespectful, but that's just kind of what I expect to happen.
I think this is the week where everything really shakes up. I'm with you. I think BYU is going to fall to 12, and I don't think they'll go lower because I think the Utes will hold at 13. Oklahoma is at Alabama this week. So it's not just a big game, but it's a road game for Oklahoma. And number 11, Texas, is at Georgia. They're not only on the road, it's a big game, but they are on the road also. And Notre Dame, this is their last test with Pitt. I think they've had 2 3-win teams after this, in Syracuse and Stanford. That'll blow those 2 teams out. So for the Irish, this is, I think, a win and you're in the playoff moment, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, when you look at their situation, I mean, it's kind of a unique one, right? Because they do have 2 losses, but they played both those teams really close. And Miami obviously has fallen off a little bit, but Texas A&M is the number 3 team in the country. So I think the committee's giving sort of their down-to-down, play-to-play success a lot of credit, which I don't necessarily think is wrong. So I think that this is the moment where Notre Dame has a chance to punch their playoff ticket. And you mentioned those 2 other games. And I kind of mentioned them off the top too. This is kind of the moment where you figure out, is the SEC going to start causing you trouble? Because if Georgia and Alabama loses those games, they're still in at this point. Now, Georgia has to play Georgia Tech. Alabama has to play, a feisty Auburn team. If they lose those games, that changes the conversation. But even if they lose to Texas and Oklahoma, that actually hurts you more than it helps you. You want favorites to take care of business this weekend and hand Texas and Oklahoma those 3rd losses. Because while I think, I think that Texas, if they split Texas A&M and Georgia, even as a 9-3, is still in decent decent shape to make it in as that last team. For Oklahoma, if they lose that third game, it's over for them. So this is a big weekend, I think, for just seeing what the path is going to look like.
Percentage of confidence that the Big 12 would get 2 teams in?
Yeah, I think that, it's interesting. I think that I would still put it in decent shape. I'd maybe give it a 60% confidence. If BYU had kind of hung a little bit better in that match, which, again, I don't think was about BYU. I think that was more about Texas Tech. I think that people would be talking about them a little differently, but they still have some opportunities left as well down the stretch against not necessarily top 25 teams, but maybe top 40 teams to build a little bit more of a resume. So I think that they'll be in decent shape. I expect Texas and Oklahoma to lose this weekend, which would be significant for the Big 12. And so as long as they're able to take care of business, again, we're talking about a BYU team that would be heading into the Big 12 title game at 11-1. I think that a team that heads into that kind of matchup at that mark, like that team should be in my opinion.
You said Oregon didn't cover themselves in glory. It was funny. I thought, and well, I guess we'll see how it plays out. I thought they were going to get a lot of points for winning that game. On the road, there's a team with a good record, acknowledged, really good defense, tough place to play, miserable weather, and they go down the field and win the game. I thought I wouldn't be surprised if Oregon jumped over Texas Tech. I don't know that they will or that they should, but I wouldn't rule it out.
I definitely don't see that happening, just personally. I mean, look, we'll see what BYU and how they're considered by the committee when it all comes out. But, at minimum, this is a 22-point win over a top 15 opponent. I know that obviously, again, Oregon, like you said, I mean, they actually, heading into this game against Iowa, didn't have a ranked victory because of the way that Penn State fell off. But I do think that for Texas Tech, one, they were dominant enough on their own, and two, I mean, you're talking about a team that most likely has 2 top 13 victories, both by 20-plus points. That is serious business. And also, we'll see how much the committee takes it into account. But, their loss was with their backup quarterback. And we did see the committee take that into account with Arizona State last year when they lost against Cincinnati 24-14. So I don't think that there's a whole lot of issue for that. I frankly think that Texas Tech, after this win, should be in a pretty decent position to jump Ole Miss. We'll see if it happens. But Ole Miss, I mean, again, they have a decent win against Oklahoma that compares favorably to the Utah win, but their second best win is probably Tulane. And I mean, look, the reality is that a 20-point win over BYU is better than a win over Tulane.
For the next 5 years, use that as a time frame to basically the rest of the decade, and we'll see what happens with configuration and all that. But for the next 5 years, do you see Texas Tech annually being in this position to be a big-time threat as we get deep into November? Because I do.
So I think that they're going to be a threat every single year. I think they're going to be a November team every single year. But, when you talk about them being this, we've talked about it all year. This was a once-in-a-lifetime year in terms of getting the level of guy that they were able to get through the portal for this season. Now, what they're going to be heading forward, I think, is more sustainable. They're going to have more high-level recruits coming in. But I think that one thing for every program, frankly, not just Texas Tech, is I think that timelines are going to be such an interesting factor in kind of the zeitgeist, because I think that it's going to be harder than ever to be a truly national championship level team every single year. I mean, I think that, Georgia's still really good, but I think that you could make the case this year, this is a little bit of a transition year for them because they have a very young roster and a first-year starting quarterback. And so even though they're still in the discussion, they're going to have a chance to contend for the SEC, they're not on their title timeline. I think that Texas Tech is going to be going through the same thing. I think that BYU is going to be going through the same thing. I think Utah is going to be going through the same thing, where, again, all these teams are going to be right there in the 9 to 10 win range year over year. But when you talk about actually getting to the top, when you talk about actually getting to the playoffs, I think that it's really going to be specific years where they manage to be as dominant as they are this year. I don't think that this is necessarily going to be a normal team for almost anybody at this point.
I'm sure Tech wants the bye. I don't know, given the way the Big Ten and SEC are viewed, if that's possible. But don't you think if you get the 5 or 6 seed that there's a lot of value in that, given that it looks like 11 and 12 aren't going to be cut from the same cloth as these other 10 teams?
No,
You get a home
absolutely.
game.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. I was out there in Lubbock, Texas this weekend, and I will tell you what, people would be very excited to have an opportunity to relive what they did this weekend with another team coming to town. I don't think this is going to happen. Let's be clear about this. But right now in our CBS Sports Bowl projections, the projected team to come to Lubbock, Texas for a first-round playoff game is Texas. And that would be the biggest game in the history of Texas Tech University. That city would burn to the ground, and I would be there watching because it would be incredible. So I think that there's two ways about this, right? One, I mean, we saw how cool the home playoff games were. I think that nobody would be mad about getting that kind of moment and environment, especially like you said. Obviously the first round matchup could be kind of tough if you get, a 9 or a 10. But the ACC looks like a total mess right now. I think that, I actually think that South Florida, if they come out of the group of 5, is a kind of a tricky matchup. But if it's not South Florida, I think you match up okay. But the one other thing that I'll say about the value of the bye for Texas Tech is that their quarterback, Darren Morton, is dealing with some pretty serious lower leg stuff. You could see him limping. Holly Rowe reported after the game that that he has a hairline fracture in his fibula. Now, both Barron and Joey McGuire kind of declined to elaborate on that or confirm that. But the point is this, he has a lot going on. It's a pain management situation. Their backup quarterback is out for the season with a torn ACL. So I think that they would value the ability to get him just a little healthier.
I spent 23 years at daily newspapers as a beat writer, so I can appreciate good reporting and writing when I see it. And you had it when you did the story on Bachmeier. It's an excellent piece. We promoted it, and I'm sure you got some readership out of our listeners from you coming on and having a familiarity with who you are. As I read the story, it became apparent to me that Bachmeier was trained for this moment. And as far as, what'd you say, they took him out of junior high to homeschool him and go with the workouts and all. So is that the reference point that you took from it, that this is something that he has basically been trained to do?
Absolutely. And it's funny, I was walking on the sidelines at the close of this game and actually ran into Michael Bachmeier, Bear's father, and he came over and he really, I think, appreciated the story, but he was also like, man, Bear played on the same prep school team as Julian Sayin, and he was actually playing quarterback ahead of Julian. He had all these stories, even more stuff that he wanted me to have been able to get into, but it's absolutely true. I mean, he has been made for this moment. He's been shaped by the experiences that his brothers went through. He's been shaped by the competition that he played in a highly competitive Southern California market. He's been shaped by the workouts that he did, by the training academy that he was pulled out, like you said, to do in middle school. And so nothing really phases this guy. And I actually give a lot of credit to his brothers. So Hank, his eldest brother, was a blue chip quarterback recruit, went to Boise State, ended up transferring to Louisiana Tech and Wake Forest later in his career. Tiger started his career at Stanford, graduated in 2.5 years with a degree in computer science. These are very serious people, and I think that he learned so much from them, from their experiences in college football. So when you talk about a freshman coming in, this is not a normal freshman. This is somebody who has a lot of perspective on life and competition. And I honestly felt look, I'm not going to say that he played an incredible game by any means against Texas Tech, but I thought that he did enough to keep them competitive. And honestly, I mean, in some cases, I think that his receivers and his teammates need to step up and support him too. So I'm going to be very excited to see him as the season goes along. And by the way, still think there's a pretty good chance that Bear will get his second chance at Texas Tech in Arlington.
PK was floating earlier in the show. The only way to beat Tech is to throw it, because that's what Arizona State did. And not only the only game Texas Tech lost, but the only game that was really even competitive in the last 5 minutes. They haven't been winning close. They've been blowing people out. Do you think, whether it's a Big 12 team or somebody in the playoff, who's got the passing game? Because running the ball on them seems impossible. Who's got the passing game to beat them?
Yeah. So when you talk about in the Big 12, like you said, I mean, Sam Leavitt had one of those moments that, we haven't seen with a whole lot of consistency from him this year, and that's how they were able to be competitive at all. And by the way, when we talk about that, they still only got to 26 points, but, that was the key in that one. So when you start talking about the Ohio States, and by the way, Ohio State might just be worlds better than everybody else right now. They are playing at an incredibly high level. But Ohio State is obviously a team that you think about from that perspective. I think that Alabama, with the way that Ty Simpson has grown, is interesting. But the thing that you give a lot of credit to Texas Tech for as well is that, like you said, they're more susceptible on the back end than the front end, but that's more a statement about what they are on the front end. But this pass rush makes it very difficult. I think you also need to be able to buy time, create opportunities on the run to some extent. And again, that's probably a place where I like Sayin, for example, more than I like Simpson. When you talk about Big 12 teams, I mean, again, I think that we saw the issues that Utah had against Texas Tech's defensive line. They were not able to go side to side whatsoever because of the closing speed that those linebackers have, including Jacob Rodriguez, who I think is a first-team All-American. So, it's an interesting challenge. It's very matchup based, and that's the cool thing about, I think, modern college football in a lot of ways. Maybe the last 3 or 4 years is that this sport has become more matchup driven than I think ever before. There are teams that can beat you every single way, but the number of those teams is declining rapidly. And so the draw that you get in the Big 12 and maybe in the college football playoff could play a huge role in whether you're one of those teams left standing at the end of the year.
John, we appreciate it as always. Thanks for joining us and surprise us with another suit again.
Yes, sounds good. Talk to you guys soon.
All right, thank you. Shehan Jeyarajah joining us right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. A reminder, we're brought to you in part by Teton Wealth. Ethan Miller with Teton Wealth will be live in studio with Hans and Scotty today to help you with your retirement plan. Tune in or visit retireteton.com. DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.